Hello and welcome to another installment of Maro's YouTube Safety Training Series. I'm Todd Culver, the Assistant Director for the Association, and our topic today is office ergonomics. I'll provide you with a couple of definitions for ergonomics, talk about some of the types of injuries that can occur when we don't pay attention to the principles of ergonomics, some of the risk factors that can contribute to those injuries, as well as some prevention strategies. And we'll conclude with some analysis of workplace specifics, particularly as it relates to workstation design in an administrative or office environment, especially with a computer workstation. A subtitle or soundbite for the study of ergonomics is fitting jobs to people, and it represents a change in the way that we look at doing work that's occurred over the last 15 to 20 years. In the old days, particularly in a manufacturing environment, jobs were set up or structured around a product that was being made or a process that was being used to make them. And a worker had to fit themselves into that environment. And if they couldn't do that, they were quite often fit out the door. Those were the rules. And ergonomics is about a different way of looking at work. It has to do with the study of the relationship between people and their working environment, structuring that environment to allow workers to perform their job with as little strain on the body as possible. And the ultimate goal is injury prevention. Some of the risk factors that can contribute to those injuries are high rates of repetition. If we perform a task over and over again using the same muscle groups without giving them a chance to rest and refresh, then those muscles fatigue and can ultimately be damaged. Particularly that's true of computer work, if folks are doing a lot of data entry or typing at a keyboard. Force can multiply repetition as a risk factor. The more force that we need to apply to perform a given task, the greater the risk of ergonomic injury. Extremes of temperature, particularly if it's very cold in the working environment. Vibration and impact, especially direct pressure to the palm of the hand, can increase the risk, as well as use of a pinch grip, which is this motion right here, particularly if it's applied forcefully. Other environmental conditions can contribute as well, including the hours worked per day or per shift. An individual's level of conditioning or physical fitness can also be a factor because it affects the rate of recovery, particularly from repetitive use of specific muscle groups. And two of the biggest risk factors for ergonomically related injuries are unsafe body mechanics, the position that we put our bodies in when we're moving or working, and poor posture, which is the position that our bodies are in when we're at rest. The target areas or the muscle groups that can be affected or placed at risk when we don't pay attention to ergonomics are generally focused for an office environment around the upper extremities, hands, elbows, wrists, and shoulders, but it can also include our neck and lower back. And these multiple risk factors can all add up. The types of injuries that can occur if we don't attempt to control these risk factors are referred to as cumulative trauma disorders or sometimes as repetitive strain injuries. They are the most frequently occurring type of injury in the workplace, and they're referred to as cumulative trauma because they are not the result of a single event. It's not like tripping over an extension cord or falling off a ladder, but these injuries result from damage that's done over an extended period of time. The bad news about that is that we can perform tasks and even make lifestyle choices which can contribute to a long-term problem without us realizing it, or at least without feeling it, without it producing any symptoms. The good news is that by understanding the causes, some of these risk factors, and making some changes, we can do things differently and reduce the chance for injury. These changes are sometimes referred to as ergonomic control measures, and there are several options for these, one of which is to reduce the number of repetitions in a particular task through job rotation, rotating multiple workers through the same task through the course of a work day, or perhaps assistive automation that can take some of the workload off an individual and the muscle groups required to perform the task. The three that we'll focus on in our time together involve the design of the workstation, selecting tools and arranging them in such a way that we limit or avoid awkward postures. Create an awareness by training employees on the use of appropriate body mechanics, trying to stay in the neutral zone, reducing the amount of stress or fatigue on the muscle groups involved in performing a task, and also exercise programs which promote both strength and especially flexibility. The first area that we'll discuss is workstation design. And you see a diagram before you of a basic computer workstation, and there are several considerations for workstation design as it relates to a computer. Some of the basic considerations, again, for a workstation design as it relates to a computer with office ergonomics are the position of the monitor. And we generally like to see the monitor directly in front of the user, not off of the corner where the individual would have to bend or twist the neck and shoulders. And have the focal point at or slightly below eye level, and by focal point I mean the top of the screen, not the top of the monitor itself, but the top of the screen. You can see I'm just about at eye level. Next is if transcription is being performed a great deal, especially repetitively, it's very useful to have a document holder that places that item that's being transcribed as close to the screen as possible to minimize the amount of bending and twisting with the neck and shoulders. Other considerations include placement of the keyboard at both a height and distance so that when using it, the individual has approximately a 90-degree bend at their elbow, or an L shape to it. We also like to see the wrists supported to minimize awkward bending or twisting of the wrist, and you can see that I have a wrist support pad here in front of my keyboard. And as well, since a lot of the work that I do involves using the mouse, I have a pad for my wrist when I'm using the mouse as well. The other consideration with keyboard placement is wrist posture, and you can see in the diagram here that the user has excellent natural posture. The wrist is in a natural or neutral position. If that's not the case at a computer workstation, additional supports can be added to assist with creating that natural or neutral posture. With chair features, there are a few considerations. The first has to do with safety. You can see in the chair depicted that there are 5 points on that chair since it has wheels on it, and that creates more stability. If you are on a chair with wheels, it should have at least 5 points to make sure that the seating surface is stable and secure. And the next consideration is good lumbar or lower back support. And adjustability is also a consideration, particularly if a workstation has multiple users. It allows for each person with their individual characteristics to remain comfortable by adjusting the workstation to stay in their neutral zone or their most comfortable position. With some of the other accessories on the desktop that I use frequently, whether it's a calculator or the telephone, to have them within an easy reach, an easy what's called swing space that minimizes the amount of reaching or bending and twisting to keep me as comfortable as possible when I'm at my workstation. Next is an awareness and training on body mechanics and posture. And what you see on the screen now is a series of postures on the left-hand side with the red circle and line through it are postures that can be awkward and that we should avoid. Unnatural bending or twisting, particularly of the wrist. What we like to see is having the hand as a natural extension of the forearm. We also like to have the elbows hang naturally at an individual's side when they're working, not have them out away from the body, but to have them hanging naturally at our side, again, as comfortable as possible. And the next area that we have some influence over that can reduce the chance for repetitive strain injuries is exercise, particularly stretching exercises that promote flexibility. And on the screen now you'll see a series of stretches for the upper extremities for hands and wrists that can be very useful in preventing repetitive strain injuries for wrists and forearms, particularly if an individual is using a computer and keyboard repetitively at work.